Welcome everyone to a meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm David Moeller, Secretary Monica Tibbetts not here. Please advance to the next slide. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo.org/MPO_DISCRIMINATION. Next slide. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Betsy Harvey of the MPO staff at eharvey@ctps.org or 857-702-3701 or via the chat box. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. First item on the agenda is introductions. Please call the roll.
Mass. Seat 1.
This is David Moeller.
Thank you. Mass. Seat 2.
John Bouchard, representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver, present.
Mass. Highway Division. Next is MBTA.
Sandy Johnson, representing General Manager Phil Ang in the MBTA.
Massport.
Sarah Lee, representing Massport.
MAPC.
Julia Wallers, representing MAPC.
MBTA Advisory Board.
Morning, everybody. Brian Kane at the MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning. Advisory Council is next.
Leonard Diggins, Advisory Council, recovering from a session at town meeting last night. Very low energy.
Hope you feel better. City of Boston. City of Boston BTD.
Jen Rowe, representing Mayor Michelle Wu and the City of Boston.
City of Boston BPDA.
Jim Fitzgerald with BPDA, representing Mayor Wu and City of Boston.
At large, City of Newton.
Good morning, David Kozis, representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and the City of Newton.
At large, Town of Arlington.
Morning, John Alessi, representing Select Board Chair Steve DeCourcy in the Town of Arlington. Similar to Len Diggins, dealing with the same town meeting from last night.
Oh, sure. Good morning. At large, Town of Brookline.
Good morning, Erin Chute, representing Chairperson Bernard Green, Town of Brookline.
Morning. Inner Core Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville in the Inner Core, also representing Mayor Tatiana Ballantyne.
Good morning. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard, representing Acton Select Board Chair Jim Snyder Grant for the Magic Subregion.
Good morning. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West and Mayor Sadisky.
Awesome. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Wynn here, representing City of Beverly and the North Shore Task Force.
Thank you. North Shore Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington. Next is South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Chris Diorio, representing South Shore Coalition for Town of Hull.
Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham. Next is Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Roger, and pardon me, at-large city of Everett as well.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, Jay Monty, City of Everett, and representing Mayor DiMaria.
Pardon me, and thank you. Next, we will have Federal Highway Administration.
Good morning, Ken Miller, Federal Highway.
Good morning, Federal Transit Administration.
Morning, Kirsty Hostetter, FTA Region 1.
Morning. Have I missed anyone on the roll call? That is the roll. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I don't have one this meeting, so we'll go directly to the executive director's report. Tegan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed the break we had, not meeting in the first week of this month, although it sounds like you're plenty busy and sleep deprived from town meeting as well. So, but welcome. I'm glad you're all here. For the executive director's report today, I will cover just some quick staffing updates, a few engagement updates, and then I want to give you a preview for some off-cycle performance target adjustments that will be coming up. And then, of course, the usual quick preview of today's agenda and the next meeting. So if we can go to the next slide. The staffing update I have is that we'll have 2 new hires that are scheduled to start in the summer. The first one in June and the second one in July. One is an assistant transportation planner, which will be in the MPO activities group, and the other will be the new manager of the congestion management process in the MPO planning and policy group. So you'll hear more from me about them after their start dates, but I wanted to let you know that those positions would be filled soon. And we are still actively recruiting for 4 positions. So as always, I encourage you to go to our careers page to see those opportunities. Next slide, please. So as our engagement updates, staff have been attending a number of in-person events as we do this time of year to talk with members of the public about the MPO's work. So for example, recently we attended a bike month kickoff in Somerville on April 28th, and that was hosted by several bike advocacy organizations. And at that event, we focused on discussing our work on the bicycle and pedestrian planning and infrastructure. And then staff also attended the Wake Up the Earth Festival. I just got muted by accident. Okay, I'm good now. In Jamaica Plain on May 4th and the Boston Open Streets event in Dorchester on May 5th. And at those events, we talked more generally about the MPO's goals and the project funding process. We were able to gather input that could be analyzed and shared as part of the TIPS public engagement appendix. So we will be planning to attend more events in the summer and fall as the opportunity for us to keep building up visibility into the MPO's work and therefore also trust about the MPO's work. And it also gives us an opportunity to collect input about the input into the development of the next long-range plan and other projects and programs that are ongoing. So we'll keep adding these events to the MPO calendar and share updates about them. And please contact Stella Jordan, as always, if you'd like more information about the activities and what we're learning. And also, of course, please, if you have ideas for events that we should attend, please contact her and let her know. Next slide. I mentioned I'd also be giving you a preview today about a topic coming up soon. So in March, we wrapped up our annual cycle around performance target setting. You'll recall that Sam Taylor, our manager of performance-based planning and programming, presents on a series of performance targets that are required by the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration. And with that kind of usual cycle completed, I'd like to preview for you all 2 additional performance areas that will bring to your attention in the next several months, which come outside of that annual cycle, and you'll have the opportunity to act on. So those are in the areas of congestion management and air quality, or CMAQ, and greenhouse gas emissions. So on the first, CMAQ performance targets are set every 4 years instead of annually, and there's a required biennial or mid-period report. That report has to be submitted this year to FHWA by October 1st. So of the 3 CMAQ targets that are shown on this slide, the third metric in particular, the percent of non-single occupancy vehicle travel, might warrant revisiting because data indicate that the Boston urbanized area would already be exceeding the targets that were set for 2023 and 2025. So given that information, staff will come back to the board in case you would like to adopt more ambitious targets in this area in that biennial report. And then second, the next bullet, you may recall that there was a requirement that was discussed with the board that was then subsequently nullified by a federal district court to establish 4-year performance target for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Before the nullification happened, MassDOT did submit a performance target reduction of 7.9% of tailpipe CO2 emissions to the FHWA to meet that GHG when it was a requirement. So while now the MPO is not legally obligated to establish a GHG performance target, we're also not restricted from doing so. And because with the initial requirement, MPO staff had already started the planning stages of working towards establishing a requirement, our proposal is to come back to the board also later in the summer in a few months to ask whether you would like to adopt a similar or different GHG target. So since these decisions are both optional and would represent a change, and because you all have recently had some more robust conversations around performance targets, we wanted to give you an advance notice about these conversations coming up. If you would like to know more, if you'd like to discuss in advance of the meeting that we will discuss this, please reach out to Sam Taylor, again, the manager of the performance-based planning and programming, who will be presenting on these topics. We think it's likely we'll present in September. That remains to be seen through agenda setting and other factors, but just to give you a sense of the timing, there's a few months to think about reaching out and talking about this. So with that, next slide, please. So with today's agenda, we have several action items that are worth noting. There are 2 amendments to discuss for the current federal fiscal year 24 to 28 TIP. The first amendment 6 is a vote to endorse. It's already been out for public comment. The second is an amendment that we will ask you to vote to endorse with a shortened comment period. And that is because it reflects changes that we've already rolled into the 25 to 29 TIP and the MBTA SIP. We want to make those adjustments in the 24 to 28 TIP to match those. So the conversations have sort of happened, and we want to sort of procedurally make sure that the TIPs line up. But Ethan Lapointe will present more on those. Then also there is, sorry, I lost track of my, yeah, I think that's good. And then also there is a, sorry, I lost my place. Then also we will be talking about the 2025 UPWP. We'll be presenting on the draft and then asking if you would like to release that for public comment today. And that is the annual work program for the staff of the MPO, as well as MAPC work that is funded through the PL funds. So next slide, please. So the next meeting will actually be in 3 weeks, just because of the way that the dates fall. And at that meeting, I just want to highlight that that's when we expect to have the public comment period concluded for the next federal fiscal year 25 to 29 TIP. And we'll ask you to review that and then ideally vote to endorse the TIP. So that will be an important meeting, and I look forward to seeing you again there. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Dagan, I just have a quick one. Your slide showed 2 TIP amendments, but the agenda on the screen shows 3. Are we doing 3 TIP amendments today? 6, 7,
Yeah,
8?
this is what I think I lost track on. I apologize. Can you go back to the previous slide?
Like either one's okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Right? There's 6 and 7, but the agenda on the screen says 6, 7, and 8.
There is 8. I think it didn't. Oh, yeah, Dave's going to clarify. I think we just kind of lost track on something getting added. Dave, go ahead.
My apologies. There's last minute, I think, within the past couple of days, there is an amendment 8 that will always also be voted for release today as well.
Okay, no worries. I just want to make sure that I'm not calling for an agenda item that's not actually on the agenda. Thanks, guys.
Sharp question.
Any other questions for Tegan? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any public comments at this time? So please raise your hand. Seeing none, if you want to comment during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Committee chairs reports. Are there any? Derek Cravat.
Yes, thank you. Just quickly wanted to mention that the Unified Planning Work Program Committee met last Thursday, and we received a brief presentation on the fiscal year 2025 Unified Planning Work Program, which of course Tegan mentioned is on the agenda for later this meeting. The committee did recommend that the MPO vote to release that document out for public review and comment, and approved of all of the work as programmed in there. So I just wanted to mention that we did meet and follow that normal process. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions for Derek? Seeing none, Tom Bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The MOU Update Committee met last on May 3rd. Stella Jordan of the MPO staff did a presentation, and we had a discussion on draft language to revise the role of the Regional Transportation Advisory Council. We discussed clarifying the role and mission of the Advisory Council. We outlined the relationship between the Advisory Council, the MPO board, staff, and engagement activities, and clearly defining goals for the Advisory Council. We also received a progress update on the discussions between CTPS and MAPC on the fiduciary agreement. Our next meeting will be on June 5th at 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? Seeing none, Jen Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to share that the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee, otherwise known as TIPPER, is meeting at 1 o'clock today. We're going to hear about a few changes in store for the TIP that we've earlier released out, some adjustments between that and what's likely to be seen at the in the final version. And then we're going to do an activity called a Starfish Retrospective, which is helping teams find ways to kind of reflect on a process, in this case, the TIP development cycle, and think through how to do things different going forward. So that's what we'll be up to, and you're welcome to join.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Seeing none, thank you all. Next item on the agenda is Regional Transportation Advisory Council report. Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I apologize for being low energy today. At our last meeting, we had a presentation by Casey Cooper. The board had seen this memo on the pedestrian and bicycle count application update, but we got to go into it in a more in-depth manner, and it was very helpful, very insightful. If anyone's interested, I encourage you to check the video. We also had a conversation about the MOU update regarding the advisory council, and that was interesting. We'll be talking about that some more on the MOU update committee, and we are next going to meet, I think, on the 29th, meeting for our UPWP, putting together our UPWP 3C comment letter. And then I think our next scheduled meeting is going to be on the 12th. And I'll probably have a chance to give you insights on the agenda for that at our June 6th meeting. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of April 4th. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Brian Kane. You're muted, Brian. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get off mute. The screen was wonky. I am absolutely delighted, David, to move approval of the minutes of
You're also delightful, Brian.
I'm so happy.
Jen Rowe.
Equally thrilled to second that motion.
Thank you, Jen. Motion have been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
MassDOT seat 1.
Yes.
MassDOT seat 2.
John Bouchard, yes.
MassDOT Highway Division, I believe is absent today. MBTA.
MBTA, yes.
Massport.
Massport, yes.
MAPC. Calling again.
Julie Wallers, yes.
Thank you. And then once again, MBTA Advisory Board.
Surprisingly, yes.
Len Diggins.
Feeling energized by Kane's delight. Diggins, yes.
I will call by name. Jen Rowe, once again.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Gerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Thank you. Chris Diorio,
Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Have I missed anyone on this vote? Roll call. That calls the roll. Motion carries. And to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is TIP Amendment number 6. Ethan Lapointe.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I'm the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. If we can go on to the next slide. This first presentation is the first of 3 amendments to the TIP up for consideration here today, with this first one being an endorsement of Amendment 6 to the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 TIP after the completion of its public comment period. If we can go on to the next slide. There is one slight change to this amendment here that has occurred between when the public comment period began and when it concluded. But just to summarize what this amendment contained, it incorporated some changes to both the regional target, statewide highway, and earmarked discretionary programs in federal fiscal year 2024, mostly focusing on bridge projects, one of which was in the regional target program, though its cost increase was funded within the statewide highway program, and a cost increase on a statewide highway project in Canton for the Revere Court Bridge. It also incorporated the application of carryover ferryboat capital funding that was originally to be allocated in federal fiscal year 2021 into the MBTA's catamaran overhaul project in federal fiscal year 2024. As noted, there was a cost increase adjustment for the rehabilitation of the Route 30 bridge over the Charles River in Newton and Weston. On the next slide, just to show what was presented to members at the April 11th meeting. This project is in the regional target program for federal fiscal year 2024, though the initial budget estimate that was presented was an increase from 21.85 to 27.7 million. That increase being accounted for within the statewide highway program due to there being insufficient regional target contingency in fiscal 24. That was an increase of about $5.85 million approximately. That cost or budget has been revised, or rather specified further on the next slide. It is actually a slightly lower budget estimate of $27.32 million now, or only a necessary increase of about $5.47 million. The difference between these two cost increases is such that it would normally constitute an adjustment if, when this amendment was endorsed, another cost change would need to be made. Therefore, it is being rolled into just Amendment 6. To go on to the next slide, please. Just to summarize public comment. Comment here began on April 15th and concluded May 6th, with no comments received on these projects. On the next slide, to summarize today's requested action, staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse Amendment 6, which will now include that adjustment to the cost for the Newton Weston Route 30 over the Charles River project following the completion of that 21-day public comment period. So again, this will incorporate the cost change so that it reaches its current budget estimate of $27.32 million rather than $27.7 million as was initially presented. And with that, happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Ethan. Any questions for Ethan? Brian, do you have a question? You want to make a motion?
I'm happy to do both, David.
All right, when you make your motion, make sure you make it for the amendment as presented today, but go ahead and ask your question.
Well, Ethan, first of all, congratulations again on your recent graduation. Good job. Can you just explain the piece about the MBTA cats again?
Yes, so this is funding from a previous year of the federal, I believe it's in the state highway program usually, though I may need to defer to OTP on how this carryover works, but it is ferryboat capital funding that was initially allocated for federal fiscal year 2021, but was unspent. The request to move the funding into federal fiscal year 2024 would allow it to be applied to give the MBTA additional funding resources to overhaul 2 of their catamaran ferries and also purchase equipment, staff, labor, and other training resources for that as well.
All right, so I mean, that's in the current TCIP that's currently in draft, so I assume that'll all just get accounted for at some point, and we're all good. As long as the two boats get overhauled, I think that's what matters. So thank you. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I move that we endorse Amendment 6 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julia Rollers. Thank you.
I should have raised my hand. Apologies.
That's okay, thank you.
I'll
Motion has
second
been
that.
made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers,
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozes,
David Kozes, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Christy Iorio,
Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is TIP Amendment 7, and we're back to Ethan Lapointe.
All right, thank you. So as was just noted, with regard to the MBTA's capital investment plan, this action item here is for TIP Amendment 7 to federal fiscal years 2024 and 28. This presentation will request that the public review period for this amendment be shortened to 15 days rather than 21 based on public engagement program guidance in order to allow the MBTA, whose projects are the substance of this amendment, to have this amendment endorsed by the time they endorse their CIP. The reason for that is if we go on to the next slide, I believe the one after that, the substance of Amendment 7 is meant to make it so that the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 TIP transit program can have the source allocations or funding allocations, I should say, for the various MBTA capital programs updated to reflect what is now in the draft capital investment plan for the T, to ensure that basically what is in the CIP now for the MBTA is also reflected in the MPO's TIP. Again, these changes are not only already incorporated into the CIP, which is out for public comment, but these are also already factored into the draft federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP as well. The changes in this amendment cover all programs, including federal section 5307, 5337, 5339, and other federal programs, with other federal funding programs, including things like earmarks, federal discretionary grant awards, and also funding that the MPO may have allocated from the regional target programs to separate MBTA projects like Jackson Square, Columbus Ave, or projects that are in the draft 25 to 29 TIP as well. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide, just to go into a little bit more detail here with changes by program. And on the next slide, please. This slide shows the changes by each of the MBTA's funding programs here, not specific projects. A full list of projects can be found not only in the MBTA CIP, but also within the draft federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP. The projects there feed into the line items here, which include the Bridge and Tunnel Program, Revenue Vehicles Program, Signals and Systems Upgrade Program, Stations and Facilities Program, and a new item to the federal fiscal years 25-29 CIP, a new preventative maintenance line item here. The funding amounts here for the current budget for Bridge and Tunnel, which I'll just go through line by line here, of $131.17 million reflects what is currently in the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 CIP, with the new budget showing what is in the new CIP. In the case of Bridge and Tunnel, that is a decrease of about $56.42 million for the federal Section 5307 program. Other programs like Revenue Vehicles saw a net increase of $20.65 million approximately, Signals and Systems Upgrades, $90.18 million, stations and facilities 65.91, and preventative maintenance using Section 5307 money now has $62.5 million. This is a total budget within the Section 5307 program of about $1.43 billion there, a net increase of 182.82. Again, this is one federal funding source that the MBTA utilizes, and things like Section 5307 focus on capital projects and planning across the entire MBTA system. These are things like high-speed line transformation, track improvement plans, and bus facility retrofits, as is the case in North Cambridge. Again, a full list of the projects that feed these programs can be found in Table 3.9 in Chapter 3 of the Federal Fiscal Years 2025 to 29 TIP. It's also important to note that many of the changes to these programs are not necessarily cost increases, but could be the addition or removal of certain projects in the CIP. It's important to look at the detail there. On the next slide, without mentioning all of these programs over again, these are the same programs, but now within the federal Section 5337 funding program allocation. Bridge and Tunnel is seeing an increase of $166.27 million. Revenue Vehicles is largely the same at an increase of $4.98 million. Signals and Systems Upgrade has increased by $224.14 million, a fairly sizable increase over its current budget of $169.44. There's a small decrease here in Stations and Facilities programs, down by $45.22 million. And again, preventative maintenance, which is a new line item for $176.44 million. Overall, within the Section 5337 program, this is a net increase of $526.61 million to MBTA projects within the new CIP. Section 5337 funding supports maintenance, replacement, and rehabilitation of MBTA assets system-wide to maintain a state of good repair. Some select projects here, which again, the full list is within the TIP, include Ashmont Branch track replacement, Forest Hills improvement projects, and also infrastructure for decarbonized or low emission service on the Fairmount line for the commuter rail. And for the next slide, Section 5339 only has one program, and that is the bus program. This is a funding increase from $39.56 million to a new budget of $47.04 million, a net increase of $7.48 million here. Section 5339 supports bus and bus facility works on the MBTA system-wide, including things like hybrid and compressed natural gas bus fleet retrofits and rehabilitation. Moving into the other federal programs now on the next slide. So there are a few different funding sources here, starting off with both transfers from regional transit authorities and also some new grant awards here. This first one is the Ashmont Station Battery Electric Bus Charger Design, which is an award for $127,000 through the Areas of Persistent Poverty program to support battery electric bus charging at Ashmont Station. There's also some funding contributions by the Greater Attleboro and Taunton Regional Transit Authority, or GATRA, and from the Worcester Regional Transit Authority, respectively, for the Attleboro Station improvements and Worcester Union Station improvement projects for the commuter rail. As was noted in Amendment 6, there's also some additional funding in the other federal program for a catamaran overhaul project for the MBTA, carrying over ferryboat capital funding, in this case, $500,899, to support overhauls and retrofits on the MBTA's catamaran ferry fleet. And from the Federal Fiscal Year's 2024 Community Connections program from the MPO, accounting for $238,240 to support transit signal priority work for the Broad Street Corridor in Lynn. Again, this was from the current Federal Fiscal Year's 24 to 28 TIP, but is also reflected in the MBTA CIP as well. If we go on to the next slide here, this then takes us on that note of MPO funding contributions to some increases in allocations within Federal Fiscal Year 2025 to reflect changes made in the Federal Fiscal Year's 25-29 draft TIP. This being a cost increase for Columbus Avenue Phase 2 by $7.5 million, Jackson Square Station by $7.25 million, and rail transformation early action items by $6 million. Again, these are increases that are already reflected in the 25-29 TIP that have already been discussed here. They are just now being also reflected within the MBTA's programs as well. And on the next slide, in similar fashion, these are the new projects, the 25 to 29 TIP. that are supported by funding from the MPO, being the Central Station Accessibility Project for $5 million, Nubian Square bus circulation improvements for $5 million, and Petalin Park system modernization for $2 million here. And on the next slide, for the second to last line item here, this slide is for the Railroad Rehabilitation and Improvement, or RRIF, financing program to improve positive train control, automatic train control, and other fiber optic upgrades to the MBTA system. This is a rebalancing of potential receipts through a financing or line of credit option for the MBTA from a current budget or expected receipt of $469.15 million in federal fiscal year 2025 down to $100.085 million. Again, this is not a dedicated formula funding source. This was an expected source of financing for federal fiscal year 2025. In similar fashion on the next slide, this next line item is not only for the RRIF program, but also the Federal Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or TIFIA, funding as well. This is actually an expected increase across all 5 years of the federal fiscal year 24-28 TIP from an expected receipt of TIFIA funding increasing from $737.5 million to $782.5 million. So more expected financing utilized through these federal programs going forward that the MBTA will be pursuing. So with all of that, on the next slide, MPO staff are requesting that the board votes to release Amendment 7 for a shortened 15-day public comment period. The reason why staff are requesting a 15-day public comment period is that the MBTA is not only looking for endorsement before their MBTA board endorses the CIP, but also so that when the endorsement is made by this MPO board, that they may have these changes in hand should they choose to pursue federal discretionary grants within June and July, notably to mainly point to the new preventative maintenance line items within their CIP. It's also important to note that these changes are already reflected in other documents currently out for public comment. The public comment period for the MBTA CIP began on April 25th and will close today, May 16th. And the public comment period for the federal fiscal years 25 to 29 TIP for the Boston region is ongoing, having begun on April 22nd, and it will close May 22nd. Again, these changes are already noted there as well. As far as this amendment goes, public comment for Amendment 7 would begin on May 20th and conclude on June 3rd, should there be that 15-day comment period. So with that, happy to field any questions or discuss.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions? Oh, Brian, you have a question or two?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to back up what Ethan just said and urge my colleagues to support this on the board. The TCIP has been out for a ton of public comment, and all of these programs and changes and accounting have been included in that. The advisory board actually has the CIP right now. We've gone through an extensive process, written a pretty 27-page oversight report, and we talked a lot about this stuff. So this has all been aired very publicly. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the 15-day public comment period, or even waiving it. But if you want 15, take 15. I think we should endorse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Other questions? Ethan, I just have a couple. So first, TIFIA and RIF. They're in the TIP? The 25 to 29 TIP?
I could verify the exact numbers that are present within the tables of the 25 to 29 TIP, but I believe they are in one of the capital tables in Chapter 3.
And if I went to the CIP, would I see projects associated with them in the CIP? Or is it just a funding source?
I believe it is just a funding source or expected grant receipt. I don't know the exact terminology they may use.
There's no sense of how that $800 million is being spent.
I may need to defer to the T for that answer.
It's okay if the answer's no. Oh, Sandy?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can just answer that quickly. So the thing about TIFIA and RIF, those are loan programs that is financing rather than grants. And they are associated in our CIP with specific projects. I would refer more detailed questions to our CIP team, but that's the basic there.
Yes, that's cool. As long Ethan just said you could look at the CIP. That I just want to make sure that you could look at the CIP for those two. Then I have another question, Ethan. So if I'm understanding your charts right, we're programming $716 million in additional formula funding in this amendment than what is an existing 24 to 28 the tip. Is that true? Like we're adding formula funds?
Yeah, so my understanding here, based on what was provided by the MBTA, is that these are the new allocations within each of their programs by federal formula source. So yes, if that's what the increase is, that's what the tables that are posted and that were provided to staff reflect.
Okay, so now, Sandy, I think I do need you or somebody from the team to answer this question. Are you expecting $716 million more in formula funding than you realized you were getting just last year when we did the tip? Or is this carryover of we didn't actually get some stuff spent when we thought we would, and now we need to reprogram it because we're going to catch up and spend it?
I'm going to need to call on my colleagues from our CIP team to answer that. I'm pretty sure it's carryover, but we could do some checking with our finance team to confirm.
I don't need an answer now. I agree with Brian. We should approve this. But if somebody could give me an answer like after the fact, that would be good.
We'll be sure to do that, Mr. Chair.
All right, Brian, you want to make a motion? We have to do the 50-day public comment period. We don't have a procedure where we can actually waive our comment period, is my understanding. So can you make a motion to put this out for a 15-day public comment period? That's what we're doing, right, Ethan?
Yes, 15 days.
Brian, can you make
So
that
moved.
Is there a Sandy, just make the second, please, since I see you on my screen anyway.
I second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Mr. Chair, call on David Mueller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnson, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers,
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kosis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute, Tom Bent,
Sorry,
Tom
Aaron
Bent,
Shute,
yes.
yes.
Tom
Everybody
Bent,
Catch
else?
that. Aaron Shute, yes.
Yes, counting both votes. Thank you. And Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
thank you. Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
This motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is tip amendment number 8. Ethan Lapointe, you're up again.
Yes, for the third and final amendment to present here today. This next line item is Amendment 8 to the federal fiscal years 24 to 28 tip, this time culminating in a request to release this amendment for a full 21-day public comment period. On the next slide, and the one after that, to summarize the contents of Amendment 8, this is actually a fairly similar amendment to Amendment 6 in terms of substance. It is 2 project changes within the federal fiscal year 2024 statewide highway program, both being bridge projects, and also some changes to the federal fiscal year 2024 TIP transit programs, this time for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority's projects. These projects include a cost increase for the West Roxbury Parkway over MBTA Bridge Replacement Project in Boston, and a cost increase for a bridge preservation contract that has 10 bridges in it, and each of these structures carries Interstate 93 in Medford. There are 3 Cape Ann Transportation Authority projects that also incorporate purchases of miscellaneous capital equipment and also some funding adjustments for 2 replica trolleys. These 3 Cape Ann changes would actually normally be able to be constituted as an adjustment, but are being incorporated in here for purposes of limiting the number of action items. So to go on to the next slide, for some changes by program specifically here. On the next slide for the statewide highway program in federal fiscal year 2024. Again, this is the bridge replacement contract for the West Roxbury Parkway Bridge over the MBTA. This is a budgetary increase based on the achievement of plan specifications and estimates in November of 2023. The new budget for this line item is $10.38 million, increasing up from $8.89 million. This net increase of about $1.49 million is the result not only of that design, but namely with regard to changes in the amount of funding necessarily to dispose of hazardous materials in the project area. The next contract being the Bridge Preservation Project in Medford. Again, this is 10 bridges carrying Interstate 93. The current budget is $1.75 million with a new budget estimate of $4.57 million, an increase of 2.83. This project recently achieved a revised 75% design submission in March. And again, given that there are 10 bridges here and that this is a bridge preservation contract, the cost increase here is mostly an increase based on the types of work needs that each of these structures have. And finally, for the next slide, for the changes to the federal fiscal year's 2024 transit program. The first two line items are for the purchase of miscellaneous small capital and shop equipment lines for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority. The first line item using only Regional Transit Authority capital funding, functionally state funding, and also one that utilizes some federal Section 5307 funding. The first line item is increasing by $171,996, and the second by $133,713. The reason for these increases is because the authority is purchasing more equipment and other small capital items, given the availability of funding for Regional Transit Authority capital in federal fiscal year 2024 on their balance sheet. There's also a slight decrease in cost for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority's replica trolley replacement project. This cost decrease is the result of a more specified funding necessary to reflect their procurement costs to replace 2 replica trolleys at the end of their useful lives. In addition to reducing the overall budget here, the proportion of Regional Transit Authority match relative to federal Section 5307 funding has also been reduced, which is to say there is more federal funding relative to state match here than there was previously. With that, and I should also still mention that that is still within the necessary matching requirements for the federal funding. So with that, on the next slide, staff are requesting that the board votes to release Amendment 8 for a 21-day public comment period, with comment beginning on Monday, May 20th, and expected to conclude on June 10th.
Thank you, Ethan. Any questions for Ethan? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to release this for a 21-day public review process? Jim Fitzgerald.
I was just gonna actually add a comment. But
Oh, go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to express appreciation for the MassDOT team on the West Roxbury Parkway Bridge Project team that did incorporate some great bike accommodations that they're going to do with that project. So we appreciate that. But yes, I'll make a motion. I think I'm making a motion to release this for a public comment period.
Thank you. Is there a second? Tom Bent.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion has been made to release this for, and seconded to release this for a 21-day public comment period. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller.
Yes.
John Bouchard.
John Bouchard, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers.
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Gerald, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi.
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute.
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard.
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn.
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris Diorio.
Diorio, yes.
And Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
This motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ethan, before I let you leave, what did you recently graduate from that Brian congratulated you for?
Oh, thank you. I completed grad school recently.
Oh, what did you get your degree in, and what degree is it? And where's it from?
It may shock everybody to learn that I received a degree in urban planning and policy. So
A master's?
Master's degree, yeah.
From
What school, Ethan?
Northeastern University.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations, Ethan.
I want to read your thesis.
I do not have a thesis, but
Oh,
Well, that's
okay.
good because I didn't want to read it. All right, next item on the agenda is the UPWP for 2025. Srileka?
Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Today I will be presenting the draft federal fiscal year 2025 UPWP for your review. At the end of this presentation, I will request that you vote to release the FFY 2025 UPWP for a 21-day public comment period. Next slide, please. And one more. So this UPWP programs about $7.5 million between CTPS and MAPC and across 18 programs supporting the MPO and 3C processes, 2 technical assistance programs, and 3 discrete studies. In FFY 2024, we received about $7.1 million in funding, so we are working with a relatively minimal increase. This means that nearly all programs are level funded or close to in comparison to their funding levels in FFY 2024. As in previous years, the overall strategy with the UPWP is to maintain our investments in the MPO's ongoing programs to ensure staff's ability to respond quickly to evolving planning needs throughout the year. Next slide, please. This UPWP also funds 3 discrete studies. A study on blue bikes and MBTA connections funded at $60,000, a study on roadway pricing funded at $50,000, and decarbonizing the freight sector at $40,000. And a special thank you to the UPWP committee for their input and guidance in choosing these studies. Next slide, please. On May 9th, the UPWP committee voted to move this draft document to the MPO board. Today, I am requesting that this board vote to release this document for a 21-day public comment period. This would begin on May 17th and end on June 8th, actually, if I have a small correction. I will come back to this committee on June 13th to present the final document and request their endorsement, and then finally request endorsement from the MPO board on June 20th. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions, and I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the UPWP? Seeing none, Sandy, you have a question?
More of a comment. I just wanted to really express my appreciation for staff in kind of putting the emphasis in this document on developing 3 to 5 year work plans for each MPO analysis and planning program. I think that's a great framework, and really excited to look at to see more about the development of those programs, and we'll just ask MPO staff to coordinate with the MBTA in the development of those plans where relevant. Mr. Chair, I'd also be happy to make a motion if there are no other questions.
That would be great. Go ahead and make the motion for a 21-day public review process, please.
All right, I will make the motion to release the draft UPWP for a 21-day public comment period.
Thank you. Is there a second? Tom Bitt.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Final roll call for today. David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Julia Wallers,
Julia Wallers, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Diorio, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
This motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is member items. Are there any? Seeing hearing none, before we go, I would just like to say what a fine job staff did today. A lot of information presented really well. Very good job. Can I get a motion in a second to adjourn, please, and state your name for the record? Brian Kane.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry, Julia Wallers. That's okay, Julia. It's okay.
Second time.
Julia Wallers.
I think I learned.
Motion having been made and seconded. We are adjourned without objection. Thank you all very much. Bye.
Thank you.